Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today's lesson is comparing decimals 111 and 112. And our goal is that we're going to compare decimals using the signs greater than, less than, and equals to. So most of you are pretty comfortable with using the signs, but we don't always know what each sign actually stands for. So I'm going to skip down to this one. This one, if you think about it, kind of makes an L. It's a little bit slanted, but it still makes an L. So I remember that this is my less than sign. And I just think about that L, okay? This one, there's no way you could turn that into an L. It would be backwards. So that one has to be then my greater than sign. And we know that this one is my equals to. Okay, for our notes, the strategy that you learned in your lower grades about the alligator grabbing the bigger one, I remember that with even my own teacher teaching me and my own kids learning it. It's still a great strategy. You're going to grab the bigger one. You're going to be grabbing the bigger one. It's going to be a little trickier because we're going to be using decimals, but the strategy is still to grab the bigger one, okay? I like to think of, if it's money, which one would you grab? Okay, and our steps today are, we're going to write the numbers on top of each other, lining up the decimals. That's going to be key, lining up the decimals. Now, if you're given a number with one decimal and the other one doesn't have a decimal, remember, if there isn't a decimal, add it to the end. Hopefully we're pros at that by now. Okay, step 2 is we're going to add zeros to make them the same length. And remember, you can add zeros to numbers in certain spaces without changing the value. And then we're going to compare left to right. It must be left to right. Okay, so what does this look like? I'm going to put my steps up here so you can still see them. Okay, now the reason we're going to go through these steps and not just use our eyes is, I'll be honest, they're always going to try and trick you. Every test question that I've ever seen like this, they purposely choose ones that when you just glance at them with your eyes, you're going to usually grab the wrong one. So this strategy, even though it takes a little bit of work, it's only going to take a couple seconds. It will save you from making that mistake, those mistakes. Okay, so here's my first problem. I'm going to compare these two numbers. It's 0 and 123 thousandths and 0 and 321 thousandths. Okay, you might be able to see it with your eyes, but I still want you to practice the strategies. So step 1 says, I'm going to write the numbers on top of each other, lining up the decimals. So what this looks like is I'm going to be lining up the decimals. Notice this line here, and all the other digits are nicely lined up. Okay. Now, I didn't need to add a decimal to the end because they both had a decimal. Okay, then it says add zeros to make them the same length. Well, they're already the same length. They're both the exact same length, so I can skip that step. Step 3 is I'm going to compare left, remember left to right. So I'm going to start here, 0, 0. Well, that doesn't help me. So I need to go to the next one, 1, 3. Well, 3 is larger, which means this whole one must be larger, which means I'm going to grab that one. So that's the symbol I would put there. Okay, our next one looks like this. I'm going to follow my same steps. Okay, step 1 is I'm going to write the numbers on top of each other, lining up the decimal. Okay, now this time, again, I didn't have to add any decimals. They lined up really nicely, and my other digits should as well. Step 2 is I'm going to add zeros to make them the same length. Well, right here, this one's longer, so I'm going to add a 0 there. That doesn't change its value at all, so I'm allowed to do that. Now they're exactly the same length. And step 3 is I'm going to compare from left to right. So 0, 0, that doesn't help me. 8, 8, that doesn't help me. 0, 8. Ooh, this one's larger, which means that whole number must be larger, which is this one. So I'm going to grab that one. Sorry, my camera just got moved. Okay, I hope those made sense to you. Let's try a couple together. Okay, so I'm going to get my steps back, and I'm going to put down my red pen and grab my green one. So that means to grab your pencil. All right, number 1 on our guided practice is I'm going to write the numbers on top of each other, lining up the decimal. And again, both of my numbers had decimals, so I didn't need to do that. Okay, step 2 is I'm going to add zeros to make them the same length. Well, this one's longer than this one, so I'm going to add a 0 there to make them the same length. Step 3 is we're going to compare from the left to the right. So I'm going to start on the left side, and I have 0, 0. Doesn't help me, so keep going. 5, 4. Well, the 5 is larger, which means that whole one is larger, which means I'm going to grab that one and put my greater than sign. Okay, let's try one more. All right. Step 1, I'm going to write my numbers on top of each other, lining up the decimal. Notice I'm trying to keep all my digits nicely lined up. Step 2 is I'm going to add zeros to make them the same length. Well, these ones were exactly the same length, so I don't need to do that. And step 3 is I'm going to compare left to right. So 0, 0, I don't get anything from that, so I need to go on. 3, 3, nope. 5, 5, nope. 8, 4. This one's larger, which means that whole number's larger, which means I'm going to grab that number. Okay, I hope that made sense to you. You have 4 problems, and then of course rate yourself, and we will go over this in class tomorrow. Have a nice night, ladies and gentlemen.